Today we're working with lesson 1, more with completing the square. Honestly, today is nothing new. We know how to complete the square, but we just need to keep practicing it because it's a really important concept that's not going away. Your learning target is, I can rearrange a quadratic function in standard form to a quadratic function in vertex form by completing the square. The turning point of a parabola and its general shape are relatively easy to determine if the quadratic function is written in shifted or vertex form. Review this in the first exercise. So when we're given a quadratic equation that's already in vertex form, it's really easy to identify the vertex. Okay, so it says give the coordinates of the turning point. Turning point is another word for vertex. Remember, inside of the parentheses is what your x coordinate is, but it's the opposite of what it shows. So it says -3, so the x coordinate would be a +3. And on the outside is the y value as is. So your turning point is 3, 2. Then it says to determine the range of the function. Now, range represents the y values of a function. So let's look at our calculator. So I want you to go to y equals in your calculator, and I want you to type in the equation, x minus 3 squared plus 2. And I'm just going to press graph to get a visual of what I'm looking at here. And you should see that parabola in the top right corner of the graph, the first quadrant. Now, if you think of the vertex 3, 2, that's a minimum point. Okay, so that means that's the smallest point. That's the lowest point on your parabola. Now the y values, they go up from there. They continue to go up and up and up. And there's always arrows, there's always arrows on quadratics at the end of their, at the ends of the U, unless otherwise stated. But this range, the lowest point is 2, and any y value can be bigger than that. So for my range, I'm going to insert an equation for this. I'm going to say all my y values are greater than or equal to 2. There are a bunch of other ways you can write that as well. We learned that last week, but this is going to be the most common one that you see. So I'm going to keep it like that. So as a reminder, completing the square is getting a quadratic that's in standard form into vertex form. So your first step is to find half of the b value. Then we square that, and we add it and subtract it, and then we factor it from there. So it says write each quadratic in vertex form by completing the square. Then identify the quadratic's turning point, or vertex. The last two problems will involve fractions. Stick with it, don't give up. So let's do the first one together. So I'm going to copy and paste this. Letters always like to come with it. Okay. So your first step is to take half of your b value, which is 6, and that will give us 3, and then we square it. I'm not going to do an equation for this, and that gives us 9. So we need to, now this shouldn't really say equals because that equals 3, and then 3 squared equals 9. Okay, so now we need to add that and subtract that to our original equation, plus 9. Minus 9. And then we group the first 3 terms together. And we factor that those first 3 terms. So factors of 9 that add to 6 are 3 and 3. They're both the same sign. So I'm just going to say that's x plus 3, x plus 3. Now you might be at a point where you can write this as one binomial. So let's do that. We're going to do that as squared. And then we simplify what's outside of those parentheses. -9 minus 2 gives us -11. Okay, that is vertex form. Now we have to state our turning point or our vertex. And inside the parentheses, it's always the opposite. So -3, -11 is our vertex. Okay, I want you to pause the video and do B and C on your own. Okay, check your work with my work. And let's take a look at letter D together. So letter D is a little bit different just because it's not a trinomial. But you can think of it as a trinomial by just adding a 0 at the end, because that's really all it is. So if you need to write in that 0, go for it and do it, because it kind of looks strange when you're just looking at it as a binomial. But you can still complete the square doing this. So we still take half of b, and then we square that. We get 16. We are going to add 16 and subtract 16, grouping those together. Factors of 16 that add to 8, 4 and 4. And we simplify what's on the outside and we get minus 16. So really same exact method. You just have to not get thrown off by that lack of a C term, okay? And our vertex would be -4, -16, okay? All right, let's take a look at letter E together. Letter E is slightly different. You'll see why very momentarily. We take half of our B term, and this right here is where you should see this. So 5 divided by 2 is 2.5. Now we have to square 2.5. Now it's okay that we are working with fractions here. Most people get thrown because you feel like there's not supposed to be one, but there is. So 2.5 squared gives us 6.25. Same exact process. So we add 6.25 and subtract 6.25. This is the only time you're going to see decimals when you're factoring, is when you're completing the square. Okay, so now let's just kind of find some patterns here, because odds are you don't know off the top of your head factors of 6.25. So let's just look at the pattern here. Remember that when we have these numbers, okay, like especially looking at the B term, we had an 8x and then it turned into a 4 in our parentheses. Up here we had a 6 turned into a 3, -2 turned into a -1. It's really just half of the B term. That's what goes in our parentheses. So half of 5 is 2.5. And those are both plus signs. So that means we put the plus inside of the parentheses there. And we have -6.25 plus 4, which gives us -2.25. And there is our, no, we should be good. Okay, so the vertex here is -2.5, -2.25. Okay, pause the video and do the last one on your own. Okay, check your work with my work. And that's all we have for lesson 1. Make sure you self-assess and let me know if you have any questions.